Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Hello, or hello again, if you are a returning participant. My name is Peter Robbins, and the show is Meanwhile Here on Earth on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. If you're listening to this show and would rather be watching it, you can do so by going to KGRA's Facebook page or their YouTube page and type in Meanwhile Here on Earth, and the show will come up. Now, KGRA has instituted a new policy, and if you are watching the show and you are not a subscriber, you will only be able to watch the first half hour. In order to become a subscriber, very simple, go to KGRA DB, that's KGRA's, db.com, that's KGRA's website. Scroll down to the subscribe area, and when you subscribe, if you type in my name, Peter, as your subscription password, you will receive a 30% discount. It brings the cost of a $6.99 monthly subscription down to a little over $4.50, and a $75 yearly subscription to about $50. Otherwise, you can always listen live to our show on the KGRA website. Now, as some of you know, this is a special panel discussion that we're having here tonight. I'm not really aware of any broadcaster that's done anything like this at this point. And it involves a number of theologians and religious scholars discussing UFOs and UFO disclosure, and religion, of course, UFOs in the Bible, and such questions. We have two of the participants with us. Everybody else is running a bit late. I'm going to introduce everybody, and as our other guests come in, we'll simply bring them on. First and best known, I think, is Reverend Barry H. Downing. He is pastor emeritus of Northminster Presbyterian Church, which is in Enwell, New York. He earned a bachelor's degree in physics from Hartwick College, a divinity degree from Princeton Theological Seminary, and a PhD degree in science and religion from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. He has published The Bible and Flying Saucers in 1968, making it something of an historic book in a number of sentences. It has been reprinted and updated several times here and in Europe and the he has argued the events like the parting of the Red Sea and the resurrection of Jesus are UFO-related events. His new book, Biblical UFO Revelations, expands on these issues, both in terms of the response from religious groups to these issues and the way a scientific world reflects on the evidence. Downing is listed in Who's Who in Theology and Science, has been a consultant in theology to the Mutual UFO Network since 1972, and has appeared in many radio interviews and in several episodes of the History Channel's very popular series, Ancient Aliens. Ben and Paul Eno. Paul and Ben are best known as the father and son co-hosts of the long-running CBS Radio and WOON 1240 AM, 99.5 FM, Boston, Worcester, Providence Sunday destination show Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. which is in its 14th year on the air and has an estimated 3 million listeners. With combined experience of 65 years in paranormal research, the two are among the pioneers of the theory that UFOs, ghosts, and poltergeist phenomena, cryptoid, and other areas of the paranormal are closely connected. They are joint authors of Behind the Paranormal, Everything You Know Is Wrong, Behind the Paranormal 2, Bigfoot, Mothman, and Monsters You Never Heard Of, and the forthcoming Behind the Paranormal 3, Uneasy Skies. Paul is the author or co-author of more than 12 other books on paranormal and historical subjects. His latest title, Dancing Past the Graveyard, Poltergeists, Parasites, Parallel Worlds, and God, was released by Red Feather Books in 2019. When I first met Paul, and we were getting to know each other, I have to say I was completely taken aback by an aspect of his background. He is one of the first paranormal investigators of the early 1970s, beginning when he was studying for the priesthood. His early mentors included parapsychology pioneer Dr. Louisa Rhine, Friar John J. Nicola, S.J., who was technical advisor for the film The Exorcist, and legendary first-generation ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren. Paul graduated from 2 Catholic seminaries at different academic levels, then became Orthodox and went to their seminary for the final leg of ordination, which never happened because they threw him out due to his pronounced interest in and research in paranormal research. He is the holder of a rare PhD degree in philosophy. He ended up as an award-winning New England journalist, including 6 years as a news editor of the Providence Journal. Paul has appeared on History, Discovery, and Travel channels and in a number of YouTube productions. Ben, his son, 2014 graduate of Boston's Emerson College, is Paul's now older than 29-year-old son, I think, co-host and partner in the paranormal, having joined his dad's adventures at the age of 13. He holds a bachelor's degree in sound design and audio post-production. When CBS Radio began carrying Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno in 2009, Ben became the youngest syndicated talk show host in America. As his involvement with radio expanded during his college years, he was a popular disc jockey on WERs in Boston, along with paranormal investigation and writing projects with his dad. Ben works in radio, on independent film sets, and as an administrator for a major commercial builder in the Boston area. He's appeared on the Travel Channel and in a number of YouTube productions. Paul and Ben have lectured all over America and in Europe. In 2013, they starred in The Devil's Hour, a featurette from Warner Brothers that accompanied release of the film The Conjuring. They also appeared in the Travel Channel's Devil's Road, the true story of Ed and Lorraine Warren. In 2020, Ben grew up as an Orthodox Catholic and studies the tradition. Ben and Paul's websites are behindtheparanormal.com and newenglandghosts.com. Rabbi David Zaslow is just going to be joining us now. Was born between the moment when Jackie Robinson joined the Brooklyn Dodgers and the UN ratified the rebirth of Israel, 2 events which have been a major influence on his life. Born in Coney Island, New York during the Great Blizzard of 1947 and raised there, he moved to Ashland, Oregon in 1970, where he completed a master's degree with a focus on creative writing and education. In the early 1970s, David worked as a full-time poet in residence in the schools of Oregon, funded by grants from the National Endowments for the Arts. During this period, he wrote and edited books on poetry, language arts textbooks, teacher's guides, and recorded 2 albums of children's poetry set to music. In 1977, he and his business partner established a wonderful jazz club in Southern Oregon. There they produced concerts featuring legendary greats like Dizzy Gillespie, John Lee Hooker, Charlie Bird, Elizabeth Cotton, Taj Mahal, Doc Watson, Bill Monroe, Earl Feta Hines, Mose Allison, Cal Tjader, Woody Herman, David Brubeck, and Count Basie. And David, as you know, I had the pleasure of meeting Count Basie after the wonderful concert you and Steve produced for him. Rabbi Zaslow was awarded an American Book Award in 1988 for educational materials for an album he produced called Shakin' Loose with Mother Goose, featuring Steve Allen and Jane Meadows rapping classical rhymes to rock, jazz, and blues. But with all the wonders of family, poetry, and jazz in his life, something was missing, a deep personal connection to God. He felt the call to study to become a rabbi. David was ordained in 1995 by Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi in the Jewish Renewal Movement. He has been honored to be the spiritual leader of Havora Shir Hadash, a Jewish Renewal congregation in Ashland, Oregon. Before the pandemic, he regularly traveled around the country leading interfaith workshops in synagogues and churches. Rabbi Zaslow is the author of a number of books, among which is Jesus, First Century Rabbi, and Reimagining Exodus, both books aimed at an interfaith audience. Rabbi Zaslow's website is rabbidavidzaslow.com. Our final guests, who I hope will be joining us soon, are Mark Rowland and Candy Ernzel. They are both Methodist lay ministers and domestic partners who live in Roswell, New Mexico. Reverend Downing, Paul Eno, Reverend Zaslow, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. It's great to see you.
It's wonderful to see you all. David Zaslow is only going to be able to be with us for the first hour of the show. And in the interest of full disclosure, I want to thank him particularly because of all of us on the show tonight. He is the one with no real background in UFO studies other than what he has gleaned from the years of our friendship. And a wonderful friendship it has been. David and I were roommates in university. We met on our very first day at the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut, have been fast friends ever since. Several years later, became roommates yet again in the world famous borough of Brooklyn, New York, and saw our way through the latter part of the 60s together and went our own ways when he left for Ashland, Oregon in 1970. So it's a special pleasure to have him here. And again, thank you, David, for joining us, because I couldn't find a rabbi with a background in UFO studies. Go figure.
Thank you. You're my link to understand ufology more and more because of my deep respect for you and your integrity. So I know there's something real and something powerful in your experiences, and hopefully whatever I share today can parallel what your experiences are. So it's an honor to be here.
I'd like to begin by asking Reverend Downing and Paul Eno to each make an opening statement, both of whom have a vast knowledge on the subject and come at it from very different points of view. Reverend Downing, may I ask you to begin? And as Rosanna Zanadana used to say in the early episodes of Saturday Night Live, it's always something. We have lost Reverend Downing. I believe it's technical and in no way theological. So, Paul, will you jump in, and hopefully you will not be struck by lightning while you're speaking?
Well, second time's the charm, I think, Peter. Thank you very much for having me on. This is an area of great interest to me, and Ben and I actually have a lecture program on the paranormal and God, or the paranormal and religion. The interest is tremendous, and it's one of the most popular programs. And I was rather surprised by that. But one of the issues would be how would society, never mind religion, react to the disclosure of alien life, let's say? I don't think there would be that much upheaval in society. I think we all grew up with Mr. Spock and the Planet of the Apes and all this sort of thing, and E.T. I think that we would have no problem whatsoever if that were disclosed, if they were far away on some other planet, maybe visit now and then. But I think, in accordance with our rather bizarre research, that there may be another twist to that. One is that if the multiple worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics is true, and or the holographic theory in some form is true, then that might create a problem for society. If your aliens are far away on some other planet, fine. But if they're in effect right next to you all the time, along with your greatest fears and loves and things of this kind, I think people would have a serious problem with that. According to our information, if it's accurate, that is what, at least part of what the government, and there really is no government when it comes to this, it's a bunch of competing agencies and turf battles, is researching this sort of thing, not only for its scientific value, because wouldn't we love to weaponize the paranormal, but also because of its commercial value. Think of the tremendous money to be made from transporting large cargo and things of this kind, if these things are true. As far as religion is concerned, the program I described earlier, we go through the various religions and which ones would be more amenable or less amenable to the alien reality, should it be manifest. It's very interesting that the Eastern Orthodox and the Roman Catholics, both of whose seminaries I attended, would be very, very different. They're very different anyway. Roman Catholics and Protestants, in that view, are much closer together than the Orthodox are to either. The Orthodox like to consider themselves, or flatter themselves, that they are very close to the Jews more than anyone else. Although I think associating Christianity with Judaism after Paul got hold of it is an awfully big stretch. but in any case, I think that Eastern Orthodox and Muslims, who've been at each other's throats for millennia, would be the most agreeable. No problem whatsoever with aliens, I don't think. As a matter of fact, if you look at the first verse of the Epistle to the Hebrews, and I looked this up, the word used in Koine Greek, in which it was originally written, is kosmos, plural. And through him, he created the worlds, plural. There seems to be an understanding in many of the ancient texts that there are more than one world. Now, whether that means interdimensional or other planets, I think that there is a very strong tradition in prehistory, so to speak, that has come forward to us in our religions too, and other traditions about this. So the Muslims and the Orthodox are kind of close on this. I often chuckle at Pope Francis, who apparently does not know his own theology, because he said at one point he can't wait to baptize aliens. Well, they really couldn't do that, because you only need to be baptized in the Western churches who have the black spot theory of original sin if you're a child of Adam. But if you're not, why would you need to be baptized? Because you wouldn't have had that problem. And so that's not a problem for the Orthodox or the Muslims, but it is for the Roman Catholics, who apparently don't know it. So anyway, I think that there would be upheavals in some areas, and many areas there would not be. So,
Rabbi Zaslow, David, as you and I know, growing up as Jews, the world of Judaism is basically split into three parts. We have Orthodox Judaism, which adheres most closely to the more original ancient forms of the religion. Conservative Judaism, which, of course, brought us more into modern times and did away with certain traditions, and Reform Judaism, the tradition that we were born into. And in no way do I want to set you up as speaking for the Jews on this matter.
I'll give it
Jews don't agree on much within our own Judaism. But let me ask you, in your studies, is there anything in Jewish teaching that predisposes us toward or against accepting the reality of off-Earth other intelligences, extraterrestrial or otherwise, that are not necessarily divine or demonic in nature? And if so, in so many words, how would you explain that to us, and where can such references be found in Jewish writings?
Thanks, Peter. Great question. The reality is that Judaism is not just divided into three parts, but really also has a mystical area that are followed by Hasidic Jews. And that's basically, are you able to hear me?
No, we're getting some feedback. Do you happen to have a headset, David, nearby? If not,
I want my ear.
it can sometimes assist. And I don't know if that background noise, I'm not sure where it's coming from.
I'm sorry. I wonder if my earbuds would work.
Okay.
No, I'm not sure if this is going to help.
Continue on.
Is this better?
A little.
A little better.
Yes.
It might be a way.
I don't think that background noise is coming from where you are. If our producer is listening, perhaps he can adjust it, but otherwise, continue on.
All right. Or if he can tell me how to adjust it, how to get somebody speaking through the earbuds instead of through the computer's microphone, that would be great. So basically, it's very important to realize Judaism has two segments, the rational segment and the mystical segment. Now, even the rational segment in the divisions that you have are following commandments from a divine being and have a very strong tradition in angelology, in the belief of many dimensions existing simultaneously, and including the dimension of the angels, and another one more accessible, the dimension of the ancestors. Now, once we get to that point of believing in angels and believing in ancestors, which all of normative Judaism does, then it's not more than just a step away to come to the probability that if there's extra interdimensional life, angels and ancestors, why shouldn't there be also extraterrestrial life? So as you know, this has not been my area of study or my expertise. So you might say I'm an agnostic about it, but because of you and my relationship to you and to your integrity in this work, I think I'm not just the only one that's open, but I think many Jews who are oriented towards Kabbalistic or Jewish mystical thinking would be very open to welcoming the idea of the possibility of extraterrestrial life.
Thank you. Reverend Downing, please feel free to make an opening statement regarding your point of view in this work and your long history in it, and take as long as you'd like to do it.
Okay. You've told people I wrote the Bible in Flying Saucers and published it in 1968. The most important chapter in it, in my opinion, it deals with the Exodus, chapter 3. And my argument in it is that the pillar, cloud, and fire of the Exodus was what we would now call a spaceship of some kind, that it is described as a pillar cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, which to me says it's cylindrical in shape, like our modern Tic Tac UFOs, that it's white in color, like our modern Tic Tac UFOs. A pillar of fire at night says it glows in the dark, like our modern Tic Tac UFOs. If Moses had seen a Tic Tac UFO, I'm suspicious he would have said it was a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. The pillar of cloud and of fire is brought into the Exodus story after the Jews have left Egypt after Passover. The pillar of cloud, according to Exodus, led them by way of the wilderness to the Red Sea on purpose, even though there is an easier way to go. That seems a little strange because they come up to the Red Sea, and the text says that the Egyptian army was coming up behind. So it looks like bad leadership on the part of the pillar of cloud and of fire, unless the pillar of cloud and of fire has the power available to cause the parting of the Red Sea, which we know happened. The text, this is Exodus chapter 14, verse 19 through about 30. Egyptian angel, the cloud of fire.
Barry is breaking up a bit.
Well, I can I add something, Peter?
Yes, of course.
Down it comes down. See, what's fascinating, what he's saying is that in the Jewish spiritual tradition, but really in Christianity and Islam as well, there are literalists and those who see something as representational, or what we might call symbolic. And we do know that there are symbols, or that which is symbolic in the Bible, in the Tanakh, and that which is literal. And so it's discerning which is literal and which is figurative. That's really important to me to try to understand, because how do I cherry pick and say, well, I take this.
Okay,
yeah. Yes,
go ahead.
Please continue, Barry.
All right. Yes, I take this literally because I think the Jewish people came into existence because they were dealing with some kind of extraterrestrial power. Now they came to call this divine power, and I'm fine with that. I'm okay with many of our modern ETs being divinely directed. I'm okay with that. So for me, the angelic reality ought to be around doing stuff now. They shouldn't have just disappeared forever. So if they're here now doing things that our Pentagon can't figure out, I'm not surprised. But in any case, when the pillar cloud hovers, is reported to be hovering over the Red Sea at the time of departing, and I think it's very interesting. Obviously, the text says the Lord caused a strong east wind to blow all night, and the text makes it clear that the power of the Lord is in the pillar, cloud, and the fire. So whatever force came to part the Red Sea, should.
David, would you like to pick up again on what you were saying? And then
I think I don't disagree with Reverend Downing at all. I'm just saying that there are areas in the Bible that need to be taken literally, and like love your neighbor as yourself. How about that? And
some other type of power, such as our modern UFOs use, that caused the parting of the Red Sea. One of the interesting texts, which is hard to pay any attention to, is one that says, in the morning watch, the Jews has passed to the other side, and the Egyptians are now down in the open channel. And you might suppose that the Jewish people had just given prayers of thanks for this fantastic miracle when they looked out and said, God, do you see what's happening? The very channel you made is being.
Oh, the world of technology.
Well, this is a good example, Peter, is that if there are other dimensional worlds, are there forces right now that are kind of creating this static and the separation between us? You know, a fundamentalist Christian might say it's Satan. But in Judaism, the idea of Satan is any adversarial force, angelic or rational, that's trying to keep us all apart and not have this dialogue. So I'm inclined to believe there is something supernatural going on right now in our technology. So
I'm open to any and all possibilities on that subject, which normally I will allow to be a technical problem, or jokingly the NSA or the Martians or the Men in Black. But yes, that would certainly work for this show. Let me ask you, Paul, Do you feel that a confirmation, and I think it's ironic that in our modern world of UFO studies, the extraterrestrial hypothesis has ultimately emerged as the most conservative one, with the other kind of Jacques Vallée possibilities of interdimensional beings and God knows what. But do you feel, you'd kind of keep this on a basic level, that a confirmation of extraterrestrial reality and an established, undeniable agreement or intergovernmental position that some, certainly not all, but some truly anomalous UFOs represent highly advanced technology under intelligent control from parts unknown, coming and going from the Earth for reasons best known to them, would in some way impact negatively on the world of people of faith?
Well, it depends on the people of faith, I think, because I've done sort of a study informally for about 40 years now on what people believe about their own faiths. And it's amazing. Even some people with theological educations will have different interpretations of their own faith. Whether it comes to churches, you can go from one church to another and hear different faiths preached within the same jurisdiction or denomination. People essentially believe, Peter, I think, what they want to believe.
And what they can tolerate believing.
And what they can tolerate believing in the end. Now, Ben and I have been on a number of panels at UFO conferences, many of them with you. And there's always a question about disclosure, okay? What constitutes disclosure? And our colleagues will speak learnedly on the subject, and they'll get to Ben and myself, and we'll say, okay, show of hands. Who here believes what the government says? And, everybody groans. I'm sure you remember that happening on a number of occasions. And it's a matter of credibility. So before we even approach the subject of what it would do to us, can we believe what we're being told? As you mentioned, intergovernmental, that might provide some more credibility. But, having rubbed elbows with the intelligence community in the military myself, although I didn't have a very high clearance, but whenever you pick up a few tips, is that you never release all the information. You release accurate information from goofy sources and goofy information from accurate sources, and keeps everybody guessing, and everybody loves a mystery. So the question is, what do we believe? It's entirely possible that the disclosure narrative would certainly have an agenda, either economic, military, political, or probably all three or more. But nevertheless, if information is released that we can't accept, I think it would, as I say, depend on the person. Now, I think it's easy to predict that evangelical Christians, with all due respect to them and their strong beliefs, would have serious issues with that. They think everything is demonic. And it's a real pain when I'm on radio shows, and there's always somebody who'll hear that I have a theological education in seminaries, and they'll blame me for not espousing their religious beliefs. And of course, when you start talking about ETs and things of this kind, that all comes up. So essentially, I think there would be varied reactions as there are to everything else in life. And I don't have a lot of confidence that people are going to sort of rally behind any sort of information like this, no matter how credible it is.
For me, and again, even if we were all here, we still represent several denominations of Christianity and one of Judaism. On a follow-up show to this, I very much hope I can have representatives from the Buddhist and Hindu community, an Islamic prelate, as well as Christians and Jews, to discuss this in a more rounded manner. For me, every religion, well, not for me, but for the world, has its extremists in both directions, what we would call fundamentalists. And the guiding principle there is that there is no room for interpretation. Everything is literally as written, and to try to vary it and open it up to other interpretations is absolutely not appropriate. I have gotten to a number of respectful tangles with evangelical Christians who are fundamentalist in their beliefs, and there's no arguing it. They always have a, if I were to say the Hubble telescope has captured a number of seemingly under intelligent control and welcome, Ben, by the way, seemingly under intelligent control objects coming in from deep space that we watch make, a very defined angle turn and just go off in another direction. We don't have anything that does that. A response would be, well, Satan observes these things too and can mimic it with his minions. There's just no getting away from it. For me, a question that oversees all of these questions is, if one thinks purely in a secular manner and looks at the possibilities of life beginning on an Earth-sized planet, approximately the same distance that we are from the sun, from a sun-sized star, and we have millions of these possibilities in the cosmos, that we have the basic building blocks in a purely scientific manner for the primordial ooze to produce the conditions to produce that first one-celled animal, and then we're off on running. If you're a person of faith, you have the potential for the miracle of creation to take place, and then the myriad of creatures that spring therefrom. I guess my question to all of you, and I'll begin with Rabbi Zaslow, is, do you feel that an absolutely definitive understanding of us on Earth, that we are not alone in the universe, would strengthen or challenge our belief in God within Judaism, in your instance?
Again, a great question, and of course, impossible to answer in a simplistic. But I will say that when you go to the Hebrew in the Torah, in the Bible, words that have a certain meaning in English have a completely different meaning in their Hebrew, and that's what Paul was referring to before. In a way, we're closer to the Eastern Orthodox Church in that their Hebraic thinking, Eastern thinking, has multiple possibilities for certain words. I'll just give you a really simple example. A fundamentalist says, well, the world was created in 6 days and God rested in the seventh day. But these people have no idea what the Hebrew word for day means or meant, because the word for day is yom, and it means a period of time, indefinite in definition. So, for example, if you said to me, do you believe the world is created in 6 days? I go, yes, but it depends how you define a day. So if you tell me that a day is 2 billion years old, and then tell me the world was created in 13 billion years, and we're on the verge of the giant rest period, I go, yeah, that's possible, because the Hebrew confirms it. So first of all, the notion of literalism and symbolism is very important, because once you take something literally, as Reverend Barry was saying before, you've got to look at other things in a literal manner too. Ezekiel chapter 1, could it be a UFO? Possibly. Do I know it? Do I take it as a literally? I don't. Right now I take it emblematically, symbolically. But it sure wouldn't shake my faith if Paul or Ben or you were able to demonstrate to me that Ezekiel chapter 1 was really a starship visiting a spaceship from another planet. So I think that there are progressive mystics in every single faith tradition whose faith would not only not be shaken, but would be really strengthened.
Yes.
Part of the problem, I don't want to go on too long here, but part of the problem is, in your world, is that there are bad actors and good actors.
Yes.
In my world, there are bad actors. There are mystics who are cult leaders, or there are religious leaders who are kind of out of their minds and their fundamentalism, and they give a bad name. If I'm talking about interdimensional reality or the reality of angels, people will poo-poo me because the bad actors in my world have kind of polluted the world. And I'm sure in ufology, in your world, right, Peter, you've got some bad actors who are kind of like, they're off their rocker and they ruin the work that you're doing and Paul is doing.
We do. There are extremists in every field. A question for you, Ben, and welcome, my friend. It's great to see you.
Yeah, I apologize for being so late.
Not a problem. Absolutely not a problem. One of the things that has fascinated me about the Roman Catholic Church's evolution in their thinking, their edicts, and their public positions regarding other intelligences from parts unknown, UFO related, is I don't think, in my understanding of the world of organized religion, that historically there has ever been a religion more organized and more controlling of so many aspects of its followers' thinking. And of course, going back in time, some of them draconian and very repressive. I remember some years ago thinking with a certain amount of existential irony that it was very nice that the Pope chose to apologize for basically
The Seventh Crusade.
well, that was very touchy. It's true. And we're still dealing with some of the fallout from that. But for putting forward the scientific theory that the Earth and other planets revolved around the sun, the great scientist who put forward that idea was rewarded for that thinking by being burned alive. And in more recent times, an official apology for that overreaction, perhaps, was put forward. Now, of course, the Catholic Church is the most forward-thinking and the most open-minded and accepting of the idea of extraterrestrial reality, with no strings tied to anything demonic or other than what it obviously is in some cases. Do you feel, as a practicing Catholic, that a confirmed announcement that would be accepted overall by the world at large, we call it disclosure, that we are not alone, that other intelligences come and go in the conveyances of advanced technology, that among Catholics, this would strengthen or create a certain amount of chaos or confusion in their belief in God, per se?
Well, first things first. I am not a practicing Catholic. I'm an Eastern Orthodox Christian in the Orthodox Church of America, or the OCA. But what I can tell you is I do know many practicing Catholics. My wife is a practicing Catholic.
Well, also in your religion as such as well, and you can certainly welcome to include that.
Oh, sure. Well, I'll address the first portion to the best of my knowledge. Just from talking with my Catholic friends, some of whom are in seminary, some are priests. It's really interesting because Catholic social teaching is very forward thinking. Like, if you're familiar with Dorothy Day and the Catholic worker movement and all of that, it is very forward thinking, and it can be misconstrued. It is their social doctrine is very much based in the world at large, and it's based in sort of trying to build up like a cultural morality, from what I understand. But when it comes to extraterrestrial stuff, sort of thinking beyond, I do know that the Vatican has probably one of the best funded now I'm forgetting what it's called. Basically, an astronomical laboratory,
Yes.
and it's they have the ability to do this, and it does seem like there's kind of been a 180 of dream beliefs and all. To be fair, most of that was fueled by politics. Vatican, as we know it, was essentially built in sort of the form of a government, sort of in the middle of the 900s, 11th century, around that period, and it was formed more into almost a state than anything else. But that was mostly as a response, in my opinion, to the fall of the western portion of the Roman Empire. And I guess it depends on who you talk to. From what I've seen and from what I understand, the Catholic Church, as it's called, is not as united as it seems. There are many different camps inside of it that are have varying belief systems. You have the more conservative portions, which sort of follow along the lines of what our good rabbi friend here was talking about. With you have the crazy mystics on one side that are saying some crazy stuff, and then you have stuff on the other side as well, which is much less spiritually focused and more world focused, and it's hard to kind of find a balance between the two. What I can kind of see just from being in sort of this fun place between East and West is a lot of stuff that I personally don't understand growing up in the Eastern Church, because the way doctrine functions and dogma functions doesn't define a mystery. It delineates the borders of it. Yeah. So it's a very big difference than, all right, this is what it is. We can just say, okay, well, we might know this, but we don't know definitively. We have an idea, but we don't know definitively. Right. So the same goes with extraterrestrials. In preparation for this show, much like many things in the Eastern Church, there are no official teachings about, there's a lot of like very specific stuff that just has come up within the last 100 years that nobody's really talked about because they just don't really see any profit in it. Right. It's like I remember there was a 60 Minutes piece when the Dead Scrolls were found. And they went to a monastery, I think in Egypt, and they I forget who it was like talking to the monks, and they're like, "You have a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls here. This hasn't like changed your opinion or anything." And the monk just kind of replied with, "Well, it's not profitable, so we don't really read it." So and that's kind of the viewpoint is, okay, well, yeah, it's there. We keep track of it. We write everything down because no one else is going to, but it's not profitable, right? So it's just kind of like, well, we have it there for history, but we don't really, it's like it's there, but has anything good come of it? Not really. So anything that's ever been written down by extraterrestrials is by a very controversial figure by the name of Father Seraphim Rose, and he's the only Orthodox figure that's ever written anything about it. And he wrote a paragraph, and it was in his book called Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future. In it, he kind of deals with communism, and he wrote it in the 1950s, so keep that in mind. So the only thing he writes about it is, well, we don't really know, and we shouldn't trust it, is kind of the overarching thing, which is most things in the Eastern Christian Church, which is if you don't understand it, just it's kind of unknown territory. But there's a really big difference between the East and the West, and that's the cosmological view of how we interpret things that are sort of beyond ourselves. And I figure we're running out of time. But I'll leave it at that. That the West has its issues, but they are moving forward in some way, shape, or form.
David, a question. Well, it's a question for any of you, but David, I'm going to ask you because we will have the least time with you, and it's a big question. Essentially, it's trying to put ourselves in the place of some of these other intelligences. My feeling is we may well be dealing with a myriad of them, with different relationships with humanity, with different intentions, with possibly as varying views as we human beings have. What do you think about an intelligence, a civilization, a culture that has grown so advanced that it can create the technology to go possibly countless miles with power sources that we haven't even imagined yet. And have advanced to the point that they may be 50,000, a million years ahead of us. What do you think the possibilities are that they have their own faiths, that they see creation as emanating from a central divine figure, that they believe in God or not?
Isn't that incredible? Wow.
Easy question for you. I know you have the answer at the tip of your tongue.
Truthfully, if you're a monotheist or believe in the unity of God, then all dimensions or all understandings of the divine, of divinity, are really looking at the same divinity from different angles. And so if a Christian friend calls God Jesus, and even a non-theist, like if a Buddhist friend calls God or doesn't call God, but understands reality, and a Muslim calls God Allah, and a Jew calls God through the Tetragrammaton Adonai, we're all looking at the same reality. It's just that we're describing it with our own local metaphors. So these miraculous understandings, listen, it's pretty normative if you study. I'm not going to go into the stories in the Torah, but there's an understanding of miraculous events occurring in this world right now that sometimes we don't even fully understand. So the story of Jacob when he's fleeing from his brother Esau, the normative teaching is that he had to get to a certain place by evening, and so literally the road collapsed upon him, or the place came to him, or he went to the place, supernaturally in a very fast manner. So this mysticism that's embedded within the rationalism of Judaism. So I can't imagine that if in another world, I don't think they're worshiping another God, but I think that when we find life and we can communicate directly with the life, I'm going to look at the closest thing to a Jewish synagogue on some other planet as possible, so I could speak to them about their interpretation of the same cosmic realities.
Paul, your thoughts on that same question?
Well, in the film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, of all things, there is one of the most profound theological statements I have ever heard. And the Morgan Freeman is playing the Moorish guy who is a friend of Kevin Costner's character. And a little kid comes up to him in the bandit camp and says, "Did God paint you?" Because, of course, he's black.
Yeah.
He said, "Did God paint me?" He said, "Look, Allah loves infinite variety." As I say, one of the most profound theological statements I've ever heard. To look around the world that we can see is an understatement of that. And when the fundamentalists are ever come after me, well, how can you believe in this multiverse? It's an insult to God. I said, it is a great honor to even think about that in terms of God. Because what did you learn, whether it be in church school, or wherever, in the seminary certainly, the creation is the result of an infinite love of God that had to be expressed. It could not be contained, and it exploded into the creation. Now, if God's love is infinite, why wouldn't the creation be infinite? Why, perhaps, would there not be a huge, elegant whole of all possible outcomes, which many quantum physicists believe there are, and maybe it is a perfect creation. Just because it's not for our limited paradigm and our personal convenience doesn't mean that God is bad or whatever, but that perhaps we are not to the point in our evolution where we can see all this yet. And when we do see other worlds, I've worked with some of these people in psychiatric hospitals in pastoral training, maybe they fill your pockets full of antipsychotic drugs because you're the crazy one. Whereas in reality, the doctors and the nurses, I could tell you some stories. But in any case, I think that it is absolutely likely and probable that you would have the same God being worshipped. I agree entirely with Rabbi Zaslow. There are a couple of other, but he has to leave, so I'll give him a chance to say some more.
No, that's beautiful, Paul, and it's so true. You know that Disney film Coco. It's a cartoon.
I haven't had the pleasure.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's just wonderful because it's about an interdimensional traveling to the world of your ancestors.
Really?
And so it's a Catholic, so to speak, Mexican view. And Coco is just an incredible paradigm of what the mystical side of most religions say. There is another world, there is another realm, and we go to it all the time, whether we're conscious of it or not. I'm conscious of it because I'm always penetrating that other world, looking at the ancestors, speaking to them, asking them for guidance, connecting to angels. I take it quite literally, not symbolically. And I'm watching so to speak, a Catholic Mexican version of it, and I'm going using different words, but coming to the same reality. I can't imagine in other worlds them not discovering the divine mystery that's underpinning all of reality, and that is both quantum and Einsteinian at the same time. Paradox is resolved. Let's get down to it and celebrate together.
That's a perfect note to end our first hour on. Rabbi David Zaslow, David, my dear friend and brother, wonderful having you on the show. Perhaps we can get you to return at some point in the future. Stay safe. A good Yom Kippur. And we will be back with at least Paul and Ben Eno and hopefully some of our other guests after this break. This is Peter Robbins. The show is Meanwhile here on Earth. And why should I expect this break to go any smoother than the rest of the show?
It's live radio, folks.
You can't beat it.
Amazing. So my sound settled down after a while?
Yes.
Good.
A miracle of sorts.
Really, exactly. Paul and Ben, I'd love to get to know your work more, to kind of look you guys up on Google and find the real Paul and Ben Eno.
I will send you their contact information, their website information. I think I see a beginning of a wonderful friendship here.
I think so. Rabbi, what a great honor to know you and to be on with you here today.
Yeah, I apologize for being so late. If everything was as profound as everything you were saying, I'm so sad I missed it.
Oh, you missed the good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I had trouble getting on at first because of just interdimensional interference on my on my browser. It wouldn't accept my browser. Listen, Peter, send me their addresses as well, because I'd love to send you both my book on the historical Jesus in relation to the theological Jesus. I think you'll both love it.
Oh, we'll send you ours as well.
And you guys are related?
Yes, Jesus First Century Rabbi is in a category by itself, and David has written some incredibly scholarly books. I am very proud to say I have a copy of his very first book, written in the 1970s. Was it Today I Am a Fountain Pen?
Yes, yeah. Actually, that was the second book. The first one was Rochelle Engelman published my first book of poetry, but then in 1971, Today I'm a Fountain Pen came out. So, yeah. So are you guys related, Paul and Ben?
Yeah, we're father and son.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Did the beards give it away?
Yes. Excess facial hair.
Yeah, exactly.
And that
Peter, you're the odd man out. You don't have a beard.
Listen, I'm sorry I have to run. It is Holy Week to us, so I've got a lot of preparation to do, getting ready for Yom Kippur. So
happy Yom Kippur.
I don't think we mean that statement, but
it's like have a happy Lent. It's like
right. The opposite of it, right?
A solemn Yom Kippur.
Right.
Love you, David.
Thank you. I love you too. Take care.
You too. Okay, this is rather mysterious. We do have a break usually at this point. If either of you gentlemen need to use the facilities, I would suggest you do so right now.
I'm going to grab a notebook so I can write things down, so I can order my thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, I might. At my age, that's a wise advice. So I'll be right back.
members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button, so just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
Welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth with Peter Robbins and my special guests at the moment, Paul Eno and Ben Eno. It seems to be God's will that it's the three of us right now, as opposed to the three of us and the other guests who are scheduled to be on. And we have so much we will talk about. I do want to say I am sorry for the technical problems that do seem to be keeping us from having basically our guest of honor, Reverend Barry Downing, on. And we will have Reverend Downing on either on his own or with another guest as soon as possible when we can schedule it. Let me start with something that, with my background as a painter, and as you know, a bit of an Anglophile, several images that come to us from the year 776 AD. It's actually one image, but two depictions of it. I'm a bit of a literalist in terms of my lay interpretation of some of the images that we're going to look at. I have gotten into some respectful tangles with religious scholars or people of faith about what we're seeing here. This is essentially coming in toward the Dark Ages. I don't know whether these were images that were set down in a monastery, an image that was set down in a monastery at the time, but it does not seem to be an image of something theological, so to say. It almost looks like a stylized version of Sputnik, but it is intriguing for what it is. This is a Yugoslavian fresco from a monastery that was painted in the year 1350. It's not a good reproduction, obviously. However, you can see in the upper left, and the logo for the show covers the upper right, but two wonderful images that certainly could be highly stylized symbolic representations of something, or a depiction of something like something observed by monks or others who ultimately set these images down in fresco. And the other one, this next image comes to us from Romania. It was painted in the 1400s. And what is that thing over the house? I'm willing to concede that the whitish globes that kind of arc around it may well be highly stylized clouds. But what is that thing in the midst of them? This is a 15th century painting, and it's been argued that the objects seen in the skies are depictions of what we call lenticular clouds. Many of you are familiar with them. They're often very beautiful. The term lenticular comes from the root word lens, because they are round and often convex. But these seem to me not to be that, but a mass sighting of a fairly conventional depiction of a genuine unidentified flying object. A 15th century painting. This is it in full. We then go to this image, which is also 15th century, and I don't have the nomenclature on it right here. Upon close-up, those are not angels. They are UFO shapes. Once again, we have an object in the sky. I should have a close-up here, but I don't. That also is UFO ovoid, and a beam is shining down to this depiction here, whether that's Mary or a woman in prayer, I don't know. This is a favorite of mine, School of Lippi, also 15th century. On first glance, it looks like a Madonna and Child, but we see in the upper right something in the sky and a figure observing it. Upon close-up, we see that the object, again, is not an angel or Jesus or Mary or another traditional religious depiction. And when I first saw this painting, a reproduction of it, I was struck by the fact that the painter chose to include this figure who is observing this thing, hand shading eyes in a traditional pose with his dog. And I thought, as a painter, this is a painting that was obviously done on commission. The world of modern art did not yet exist for several hundred years. You painted on commission, either for a wealthy person or the church. And here, if I were a painter and I had seen this thing, possibly a life-changing experience that it would have been at the time, as it is for people who have close UFO sightings today, I might have just decided, because I was so obsessed with it, and I know I'm reading in, and I know this is purely my own conjecture, to include myself and the fact that I was out with my dog. And upon closer representation, once again, we see there is no religious aspect that I can discern to this object. Crucifixion with two unusual kind of, one can read them as sort of jellyfish type depictions or depictions of convex UFOs with those lines as they would in a cartoon indicating speed and movement. And one that for me is extraordinary. It's painted in 1710. We know the name of the painter. We know where it is. And it was argued to me at one point that this little dot there is a representation of a dove, and that this is kind of an aura around the dove, and the dove is associated with Jesus, and that to read otherwise is purely, science fiction conjecture. It's the Annunciation of Christ. And I find it a beautiful painting and a very thought-provoking painting in this manner of thinking. This is the cover of a Latin textbook. All we know about it is that it was published in 1717. And once again, this seems like a depiction of a UFO, but one can argue, well, the sun is on it, but those lines, are they lightning or lines of direction or? This is an 18th century depiction of an artist rendition of the Wheel of Ezekiel. And finally, back to the 778 AD depiction, along with another representation that was there at the moment. Let me see if I can. There we go. Anyway, with this as a point of discussion, your thoughts on paintings like this, Paul, and the possibility that the modern age of UFO sightings that started in 1947 may well have been preceded by a millennia's long comings and goings of UFOs and visitations that were recorded in one way or another by individuals at the time, and that I guess the upshot of it is, as in Ezekiel, which for me is the most pronounced with respect to literalists, misinterpretation of a true encounter with a craft from parts unknown. Your thoughts, Paul, on my line of thinking here?
Well, Peter, I tend to agree with you, and I tend to be rather a literalist as far as this is concerned, too. However, in the interest of other points of view, there were, as I understand it, such paintings not only in Western art, but also in Eastern Christian iconography, things of this kind. Yeah. There were always... there was a great deal of amazement and hence the artistic depictions following the appearance of comets. Okay. And in the point of view, as I understand it, of many of the art periods that you mentioned, there was always an understanding that God was behind any celestial event and that angels would be the ministers of that celestial event. So an object that to our culture would appear like a UFO might have been depicted in that way because they thought an angel was controlling the comet. That's just one point of view. However, what really gets to me are the discs that are very clear in many of these depictions. And one thinks back to dear old Akhenaten or the Pharaoh Amenhotep IV from the second millennium BC or BCE, who had an experience apparently with a disc, which he referred to as the sun disc. And he was so profoundly influenced by this, he went back and he totally changed ancient Egyptian religion into a monotheistic approach. They worshiped the sun. Everybody had to do this. And he was a weird-looking guy in himself, but there was some condition that said they made him look so weird. He isn't necessarily an alien. And his son, of all people, Tutankhamun, restored the ancient gods to Egypt, and much to the relief of the priests and everything else. So there's one of them behind you. And so I think the disc depictions are of great significance. So, I mean, as far as being recorded as items, the things that were being seen in the sky. Another thing that comes to mind is the first epistle to John, one of the more obscure epistles in the New Testament, and that's in the fourth chapter. The advice is, do not trust every spirit. In Greek, it actually says, do not believe every spirit. Now, the word spirit is has a much broader meaning than we generally would understand it today. Today, it's a ghost or some disembodied guy or something like that. But in the ancient world, it was, and particularly the ancient Christian world, it was understood that a spirit would manifest itself through a person, and it was a form of life, an attitude that may or may not be good. And you shouldn't believe everybody who comes along and tells you anything, that you want to hear. In the same way, everything was believed to have a spirit. You go back to the First Nations. You go back to indigenous peoples. They had the same belief. So a comet or any celestial object would have a spirit attached to it. So perhaps you could take First John and take it to an extreme and say, well, don't believe everything the guy who gets out of the UFO tells you, that sort of thing. That would be my thought on that.
Ben, your thoughts?
Well, I guess we'll first things first. There's a really fun thing which is referred to as a web of relationships, and we all exist within a web of relationships. And there's sort of four ways that we kind of interact with reality. And in this case, there's an objective reality and there's a subjective experience of it. And that's sort of my main gripe with people who are kind of fundamentalist in a sense, because it's, you can't, everything, especially if you look at scripture, it's a subjective experience of an objective reality, right? They were using the tools they had to explain the things they experienced, which, it's the way that everything was understood was just so different, right? There was no separation in sort of the layers of existence, right? You have your political layer, your mundane layer, mythological, cosmological. There was no separation, right? So it's like there's a really fun thing I learned that apparently the sort of amalgam of how the name Lucifer came up was actually pulled from the Book of Enoch, of all things. And
obviously an ancestor of ours, given the name.
Exactly. So the interesting thing about all of this is, I got derailed.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
You were talking about Lucifer.
Right. So we're going into this whole thing, and essentially the whole name Lucifer comes from the Hebraization of Enlil. And Enlil was essentially, the major god of the Mesopotamian Empire at the time. And so when the Mesopotamians and Sumerians came over and conquered Judah and all of that, and when their empire eventually fell, and then Lucifer fell, Enlil fell, and all that, it was seen as a mythological event, but it was not separate from the political change. It was all happening at the same time. One of the really interesting things that you point out, Dad, and I'm going to expand on a little, was everything having its own spirit, but we're going to take the word spirit and we're going to change that to lowercase g, God. And we're going to say that there is an entity behind all of these experiences that belong in this ordered reality. So there are 4 ways that we express our interaction with reality. That would be art, music, language, and ritual. Those are the 4 ways in which we sort of interact with the world around us, right? And art being one of them. So now that we're kind of in this world of art, how do we express the relationships of everything that are in it, especially with this understanding, right? So I don't know a ton about Western art. I know a vague amount just from college and stuff. But what I can say is we work with the data we have, which isn't much, right? So we have an idea that there are cosmic entities and there's a cosmology out there that we interact with, right? As Rabbi David was saying, it's like, we all have different terms for the same thing, but here's sort of how we interact with it, right? So there's different ways in which we know and experience this. And so, I don't think it's, I always have a problem with people saying that aliens built the pyramids, because I think that kind of defeats, human ingenuity, right? Our ancestors weren't stupid. I don't think they were dumb at all. Honestly, I think they're smarter than we are, right? I think that one of the things to kind of keep in mind is how we interact with this web of relationships, and how do these entities in these, pieces of expressing the world around us, how do they fit into it, right? I think the bigger question isn't to ask, well, are these extraterrestrial cosmological entities that they're expressing in this, but what is the relationship to us is sort of the question I think that that should be explored too, which is, maybe it is a portion of this web of relationships that there are these entities out there that interact with us all the time, right? Whether we know it or not, through language, through art, through music, through ritual, and how we order the world around us. Because really the major difference between order is chaos. And so does this represent chaos, or does it represent order?
Question for both of you, a fairly scholarly one from a friend and colleague in the UK. And it goes like this. God's right to rule the universe was challenged by Satan in the Garden of Eden. Eventually, it is said Jesus atoned for this original sin that Adam and Eve committed by his sacrificial death for all mankind. See 1 Peter 3:18. For Christ died once for all time for sins. Once for all times, it says. Now, if God created the heavens and the earth and all the stars across the universe, this opens up a question. If we have ETs visiting us, with an origin perhaps from many millions of miles across the universe, how were they affected by Satan's claim God does not have a right to rule the universe, where they also provided with their own Son of God? Whichever one of you wants to handle that one.
Oh, well, there are points of view that reflect all of those possibilities. There is a point of view that the redemptive act of Christ, if you accept that, was universal, cosmological in its scope, precisely because God created the heavens and the earth. But that raises the question, the sin of Adam, which was actually pride. There's no mention of any apple or any of that sort of thing. When that occurred, is that sin shared by all the life in the cosmos, the multiverse, or whatever? If as is speculated by a number of physicists that all possible outcomes do exist somewhere or somewhen in the multiverse, there would be worlds in which there was no sin of Adam. So this becomes a very deep and fundamental question. Just theologically, I think all we really can worry about are ourselves, and as Ben said, our own place within the web of relationships.
Yeah.
And I think if we get beyond ourselves theologically, we might be too much for us, at least where we are right now. I don't know.
Well, I think it's important to note that nowhere in Scripture does it say Satan and the devil are the same thing.
Right.
There's nowhere anywhere that says it's the same thing. It's really interesting. I'm sure you already brought up the Shining ones, Father.
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, that's a surprise.
Here's your big chance.
So, Peter, you may be familiar with this. The word Elohim, which could be translated in three ways, depending on if it's a adjective, depending on if it's a noun, or if it's a sort of I forget if it was a participle or a verbal noun. So it can be translated as the shining ones. It can be translated as a serpent, or it can be translated as the cunning one or the deceiving one. So there's sort of three names. And one really cool thing I learned about early Hebrew writings was that all three of those applied, because it was very poetic and it was meant to be, it's all three of these things at the same time. It's basically just fun wordplay that we just completely miss here in any English translation. So that's a very important thing to point out. It's also more interesting to point out that the way that the story comes across, if you're really super like, this is how snakes were made, he got put on his belly, he eats dirt. It's like we've all seen snakes. We know they don't eat dirt. Our ancestors saw snakes. They know they don't eat dirt. But the specific thing is that it refers to dust, and then shortly thereafter, God says, "From dust you were made, from dust you'll become." So essentially, it's sort of the creation of basically an entity that eats the dead, right? So that's a really important thing to point out. That, and unfortunately, thanks to our good friend Saint Augustine, all of the blame was pushed on to Adam. And there's actually really three falls of man. The first one being Adam, but the big one being Cain betraying Abel. That's the big one, because God says to Cain, sin is crouching at your door, and that's direct quote. It's interesting because sin is not said like, oh well, hey, you messed up, you goofed, kid. It's referred to as an entity, right? So there's a really interesting distinction there between, oh well, you ate meat on a Friday, wrist slap. It's more of like, this is something that's there, and if you don't fight it, this is going to ruin everything. And so, he kills Abel, and he goes and does his thing. He creates the first city, has all these horrible misadventures, and then the third big fall is Lamech killing Cain. So those are the three big falls of man. So that's another very important thing to point out. Now, there with that, all that being said, if there were extraterrestrials that indeed say they happen to have the same sort of belief system, whatever. I know in the Eastern Church, there's no idea of original sin. That's not a thing. There's no concept of that. Essentially what it is there's the idea of ancestral sin, which is different, which is our propensity to sin and make mistakes, which we have a road out of that. And, doing our best to order ourselves and order our lives so that we can move forward and hopefully, fingers crossed, attain theosis, becoming like God. So arguably aliens could do the same thing, right? Because there's no idea of ancestral sin. There's nothing that says you have to be human for this. Well, kind of. There's nothing that says that, like, you know, they could actually be baptized, you know, theologically speaking, if you're going to get really literal about it.
Going back to an earlier thought I had, for ever so long, the Catholic Church's basic message regarding the possibility of extraterrestrial or interdimensional life was not that much different than the Christian fundamentalist view in general, that it's somehow satanic or minions of Satan and calculated to lead us away from the true teachings of Jesus. But again, for more than 20 years now, a new understanding of the matter seems to have taken shape in the Vatican. Predating this, however, and in cases by hundreds of years, a number of, I think, courageous and thoughtful, scholarly Catholic theologians did put the contrary opinions on the record. And I quote from three of them here that I've collected over time. This one from Cardinal Niccolo Cassano, a philosopher and scientist who lived from 1401 to 1446. I'm sorry, being dyslexic, 1464. We are not authorized to exclude that on another star beings do exist, and if they are completely different from us. The Jesuit father and astronomer Friar Angelo Secchi, 1818 to 1878. It is absurd to claim that the worlds surrounding us are large uninhabited deserts and that the meaning of the universe lies just in our small inhabited planet. And the last one, and most modern, this is Joseph Pohl, German theologian, a quote from 1904. It seems to be in accordance with the aim of the world that habitable celestial bodies are settled by creatures that recognize the glory of God and the physical beauties of their worlds in the same way man does with his smaller world. I find those such a breath of fresh air in thinking about the established current or feelings or views of their time. And it got me thinking about something that I had made notes on some years ago. I've been out of contact with this friend for several years, but some time back, this friend, who is an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, was discussing the potential impact that official confirmation of UFO reality, disclosure, so to say, would have on the country's religious communities. Her take on the subject, I thought, was most insightful. And she has a great sense of humor. She told me that she and her husband had been watching the, quote, funny and annoying, disturbing cartoon Family Guy. And Peter Griffin, the lead character in that cartoon, and then in brackets she wrote, "Do you ever watch this program?" Is afraid to go to the store Bed Bath & Beyond, because even though he's okay with going into the bed and the bath part of the store, he's afraid of going into the Beyond section. They show him entering through a door where he is immediately sucked into a world of weird equations and other oddities floating all around him. And she notes, "I wanted to use it as part of a sermon illustration, but didn't want to admit that I watch Family Guy." Now,
that's fair.
For either of you, I thought it was just a wonderful thing to share with me. Do you feel in general that a fear of the beyond, shared by the great majority of mankind, I think, people of faith as well as agnostics and atheists, as well as inhabited, they're interested in learning more about, they're interested in learning more about the subject of truly anomalous UFOs, or now as we are calling them UAPs. That sense of not wanting to be out of your kind of cosmic comfort zone that keeps us still, even in this age of more and more openness and popular conversation and media coverage about the UFO phenomena. We are still something of an outsider community. I love, though, that she put it the way that she did. Most of us are comfortable in the bed and the bath part of the world, but the beyond part is very challenging.
It's very astute. H.P. Lovecraft, who was from here in Rhode Island, where I live and where Ben was born, and was also a cousin of ours, did not only write fiction, he wrote some nonfiction. One of the books was Supernatural Horror in Literature, which is really quite an interesting analysis of that genre and why people react to it as they do. And his contention was nothing is more horrifying to the human soul than a disjointedness in time and space. I think you can deal with ghosts and werewolves and all this, or his outsiders, as he wrote about cosmic horror. But if you get up in the morning and the sun is rising in the west, you don't know what to do with that, like in any way, shape, or form. So I think that the beyond part is definitely something that scares us simply because it is beyond. When you have the unknown, it affects us deeply because what are we? We are still hunter-gatherers biologically.
Yeah.
Maybe we go hunting and gathering money at some job, but we're still hunter-gatherers. And we react in the same way. We have the fight or flight instinct. And we have a horror of anything that's unknown because it can hurt us.
Yeah.
And that could be people. I mean, at the risk of getting controversial here, I mean, we have a certain amount of tribalism in us because that's an old defense mechanism. And it's often interpreted as racism when it really isn't in the hearts of most people. It's just I don't know you yet. Are you going to hurt me? That's a hunter-gatherer response. And once you get to know that, and believe me, having served in the military, you're in harm's way. It doesn't matter if the person is pink with blue polka dots. That's your brother or your sister.
Yeah.
Period.
That's right.
So, but most people, I think, are very afraid of the unknown.
I'm going to go on.
Please.
Your thoughts. I would like to know what both of you feel about, again, that beyond aspect of most people's thinking.
Well, it's terrifying, right? We like to have things that we can prove. We like to have things that we can have, be the same every day. We love our routines. We love our patterns. And if there's even the slightest disruption, even something minuscule, right? I was so late because there was an oil truck that was clogging up Main Street here in Douglas, Massachusetts. And I was so stressed out just because of that, right? Say a cosmological entity lands in my backyard. It's like, I'd probably be more okay with it than some people. But it's like, come on, man. It's like almost 10 o'clock. I got to go to bed. I got to go to work. It's like, we have these established patterns that we exist in, and anything that disrupts it is terrifying. Even the smallest thing. And I think that, we are in a very open society, right? We do have the ability to come on here and say pretty much whatever we want within reason. But at the same time, we constrict ourselves and we build these walls around us. And as the illusion of freedom and the illusion of connection has been maintained by all of these artificial constructs, I think that we all feel more alone now than we did 5 years ago. And I think that just because of the simplicity of something as simple as a phone or a laptop, I think that this sort of aloneness that we've sort of built for ourselves, if it's upset by something cosmological, hey, maybe it'll be the great uniter, right? Or maybe it'll be the great divider. There's so many unknowns, and that's terrifying.
Something to share with you both. You may be familiar with the fact that the RAND Corporation, which most people think of as a think tank, which it is, which does various studies for multinational corporations, government, industry, intelligence community, was begun as a Air Force project. And in 1960, they produced a report on what we would now call the possible impact of disclosure. And one of the constructs that they put forward, and a reason to keep this secret, was because they felt it might throw the world of people of faith into chaos. In September 2008, an issue of the MUFON UFO Journal featured the results of a survey conducted by Reverend Ted Peters and his associate Julie Froling. It was published under the title, Is Extraterrestrial Intelligent Life a Threat to Religion? And still is very much worth reading. The goal of the Peters ETI, Religious Crisis Survey, was to test whether or not contact between Earth and an extraterrestrial civilization would result in crisis or even collapse of belief among the religious traditions of Catholics, Protestants, Orthodox Christians, Mormons, Jews, and Buddhists. The survey found that for the most part, religious people do not fear contact. Somewhat surprisingly, a secondary finding was that a majority of the non-religious respondents were the ones who were most concerned about such a crisis occurring. Is that something that surprises you or that doesn't surprise you, Paul?
Not in the slightest. I really don't think so. As I say, regardless of our religion, everybody talks about diversity, but we all that's fine. But we all grew up with McDonald's and whatever church we went to, and sort of basic fundamental human beliefs like we have to survive and things that apply to everybody. As President Kennedy said, we all inhabit this small planet, et cetera, et cetera. And he was right.
Yeah.
So I just don't think there would be a problem. I think there might be some concerns about the intention of these creatures because of our tribalism, innate tribalism. But I think that once we maybe started to get to know that would be something else. But there is another layer to this. Maybe you've heard us talk about it in lectures, is our definition of advancement. Okay, now we assume nothing but assumptions on the part of a lot of people.
That's right.
That advancement means technological advancement. Well, as I'm always saying on our show, who were the most advanced technologically? What country in the 1930s? Nazi Germany. How'd that work out, right? I would much rather have a species or a race or whatever that is advanced spiritually and morally.
Yes.
And that sees God. But you can lose God in your inebriation with technology. Yeah. So as much as Rabbi David and the rest of us would acknowledge that these creatures would certainly worship the same God, they might have lost some of that and not be a very pleasant species because of the technology having taken over the consciousness. So that's one thing I would be wary of.
Also bearing in mind, again, that we are likely dealing with a number of other intelligences, races, visitors from different dimensions or parts of the cosmos, etc. Ben, your thoughts?
Well, I have a few. I guess we'll start off, I guess, with this, which is, reality is informed by all of our experiences, right? Just like we don't know what it's like to be a bat, we do not know what it is like to be an alien. We have some vague ideas about bat-like things, but all of the things that we know about bats, whether they're, you see a cute video of a bat, eating a strawberry, or you see a terrifying bat, that's like, got hideous diseases or something like that. We know all these things about bats from what we've observed. And we can't. One of the things that I don't trust about the whole disclosure movement is if something is entirely alien, right, then we would have no idea its motivations, no idea about its morals, ethics, anything, right? We would have nothing, right? All we have is what we have experienced, which we have some ideas from people who have had contact, and those are at odds, maybe sometimes cooperative at best. Sometimes you have people say that they've had amazing spiritual experiences. Other people have said they were terrifying. They're here to destroy us. We work with the data we have, and we don't have a lot. And I can't say for the average little babushka who goes to church every Sunday, but what I can say for myself is I wouldn't really have a problem, because we're all part of this together. And if they are indeed in league with us, then odds are we'd be working together. It's a hope, it's an ideal, if that's true, but there's many ifs, right? There's a lot of if then statements in there. It's I think the first step would be just getting a straight answer from anybody, which we probably never will.
Yeah.
Well, if I may add one thought on that, and we had some interesting conversations with our dear mutual friend Stanton Friedman over the years on this.
Yes.
Would they think of us as equals? And and that's a big question for anyone of faith or not of faith. That's a big if. We would study all sorts of creatures or ants in South America. We certainly don't consider them as equals. And I think that's a major concern. So,
Stan also pointed out, for me many years ago, it was a small epiphany, and for me, that from his point of view, for nations, for their military industrial complexes, for their intelligence communities, what this was all about was cracking the code of their technology and weaponizing it. Whoever can do that first successfully, they win. They've got the biggest club and can subdue or threaten to subdue everybody else. And it's all about winning and all about domination. A unfortunate human construct in Western philosophy. Well, not just Western.
It's kind of a human thing.
Yeah. In 1937, a Jesuit theologian named Herbert Thurston wrote, quote, "From a logical point of view, Christians that accept miracles and other episodes related on the gospel cannot reject in an obstinate way the reiterated testimonies of modern and reliable witnesses to relate what their eyes have seen. There are a number of other religious arguments that can also be made in favor of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, some of which are reflected in the quotations I gave earlier." That thought that for many devout Christians, the idea that miracles, real events that are 3D, that happen, that are witnessed, that change and transform lives, that are as real as the chairs that we are sitting in, are as much a part of reality as are other parts of our conventional realities, but visitations from beings from parts unknown in advanced craft called UFOs, UAPs, whatever, is up until recently dismissible as, the fantasies of kooks, believers, mentally unstable people, tricksters, and of course the ever popular one, it's a way of making money and becoming famous. Your thoughts on that idea of miracles are acceptable to many religious people, but certainly up until recently, extraterrestrial intervention is goofy outsider stuff?
Oh, that's a really interesting point, because we live two different lives, Peter. We live simultaneously in paradox as believers and materialists. And you can blame the Enlightenment for that one. Because effectively living as a scientific materialist, and also let's just throw out Christians for an example, because that's the one that was brought up. You believe in your stuff, but then everything you're like, you're a Christian half the time, right? And then you're a materialist the other half. It's a dual existence that's lived. In that, okay, cool, yeah, miracles happen. I believe, Fatima, Lourdes, all that stuff. Yeah, that's real. But some Taoist immortal in China has lived for 500 years. Yeah, there's probably a natural explanation for that. It's this weird dichotomy that sort of popped up in sort of the modern world over the last few years, and you could probably blame the Enlightenment and Descartes with that, because we're living two different lives at the same time, and sort of a re-understanding the world around us as not just, okay, well, I'm half a materialist, I'm half not a materialist. It's, you got to pick one or the other, right? So it's either you fully accept all of it and accept that there's a reality beyond us besides our bubble, or none of it's real. And you can't be both. You got to pick one.
One of the things related to angels and UFOs that's very ancient is that The Greek word angelos is where angel comes from. And particularly in the traditions of Eastern Orthodoxy and Islam, angels are associated with miracles. The message they're delivering is often the message is in the miracle. And what is a miracle? Generally, a miracle is associated. It's supposed to be something. If you look at the Indo-European word, it's supposed to be something that makes us happy. And so it apparently, according to the theology of the Eastern Church, is supposed to be something that restores the world to what it really is. It's not stepping outside of nature and doing something magical. It's restoring. It's the fallen world that is unnatural.
Reorienting.
Yeah, exactly, and it restores the image of the world as it to what it's supposed to be. But angels are closely associated, and you wonder if some of that didn't come from contacts with extraterrestrials by our remote ancestors, for whom they did good things.
We're coming in, believe it or not, to the last 5 minutes or so of our show, and I'd like to give you each about 2 minutes to tell me what you feel our responsibilities, the three of us, regarding the wider subject that we've discussed tonight, and continuing to do our best as broadcasters and people with a bully pulpit of being out there and being able to reach a great deal more people than you can reach speaking at a conference. In your case, it knocks me out that after the years of work you've done, you have a listening audience of up to 3 million people who have become regular listeners to your show. How do you feel you can best continue to do the work that you do and help educate people to the reality of what will probably be coming at us, if not within the next year or 2 or 3, in the next 5 or 10, that will change our take on ourselves, our world, and our perceptions of reality forever? Paul.
Well, Ben, if you want to take that.
Yeah, Ben, go.
Okay. I'll look at the timer up top. That is actually a really good question, and I'll break it into 2 parts. One is I think the problem with the paranormal in general, right? Not just ufology, not just ghosts, Bigfoot, all that stuff. I think the problem of it isn't so much a mechanical problem. I think it's a philosophical problem. I think it's how we understand the world around us. And I think the time has come to kind of change and reorient ourselves to understanding everything as a whole, rather than separate bits and pieces of sort of a fractal of understanding. The second sort of bullet point is, I guess, just living well. Right. I can talk at you all I want, Peter, and I can talk at you all I want, Dad, but it doesn't matter if I'm not doing anything about it. Right. And I guess the best thing I can do is personally is improve myself and improve the way I study and live to better understand the world around me.
Paul.
Well, essentially, I think that my message is very simple. I think it's always best if we keep things simple. As Ben said, we live dual lives. My message is just whatever finds us, whether it be aliens or quote unquote death or whatever it is, I want to be found doing what I'm supposed to be doing, loving God, loving my family, including you, Ben, and doing my daily work.
Yeah,
that's all that is all, and is the best that we can do. And I think we'll be at our best with whatever comes from that cosmos or wherever, if we simply take that simple approach.
Well, I'll say an amen to that. And that this has been Meanwhile Here on Earth on KGRA Digital Broadcasting with your host, Peter Robbins. My guests have been Reverend Barry Downing, who we will have back. Apologize for the technical problems there. His website is thebibleandflyingsaucers.com. Rabbi David Zaslow, whose website is rabbidavidzaslow.com, and Paul and Ben Eno, co-host of the CBS Radio and WOON show Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. You can listen on WOON 1240 AM, 99.5 FM, and their websites are behindtheparanormal.com and newenglandghosts.com. Next week, my guest will be the UFO investigator and researcher and former Washington State police detective and military police officer, James Clarkson. Jim is the author of 2 terrific books, Tell My Story, June Crane, The Air Force and UFOs, and The Westport UFO Crash and Retrieval Event. If you've enjoyed this show, please consider subscribing, tell your friends about it, and see you next week. Same time, same station. Stay well, stand up for what you believe in, and be kind to each other.